Discussion around Honkai Star Rail's aggressive rate of output for new characters has been growing steadily ever since version 2. Up until now, each version has featured 2 5-star characters. While certainly a lot lower in frequency compared to some other gachas which tend to release multiple SSRs with every version, the price tag and pull rates for Hoyo's titles are not quite as accessible, pretty much evening out the pace of acquiring new characters. Notably, many of the game's newest releases have been placed in the upper tiers of the meta, an occurrence that shows no signs of stopping given the very ostensible increase in power ceiling of this game. Something that's been on my mind for a while though is that the output of new 4 stars does not match 5 stars all that much. So far in version 2, there have been 10 confirmed 5-star characters: Black Swan, Sparkle, Acheron, Aventurine, Robin, Boonhill, Firefly, Jade, Yunli, and Jiaochou, yet there have been only 3 confirmed 4-star characters: Gallagher, Misha, and March 7th's new imaginary form, unless you consider Harmony Trailblazer a quote-unquote 4-star. Honkai Star Rail has measurably more 5-star units than 4 stars, 31 to 23. Bear in mind, version 1 had only 7 5-star characters, 9 if we include Zila and Jingyuan, and 13 4-stars. I count Trailblazer as a singular 4-star regardless of which one, meaning in the year and change the game has been out for, we've had only 10 new 4-star units come out compared to 22 new 5-stars. Given the absence of playstyle as a result of the game being turn-based action sequences, there's a lot more competition between 4 and 5 stars since you're evaluating them strictly on the basis of what they do per turn, not how fun they are to play. Today I want to discuss why there are so few 4-star characters being released in relation to 5 stars, and what are some potential long-term consequences of it. For all the criticisms I have towards Genshin's Power 5, I can at least give them credit for serving as a reliable and strong foundation for team building. Xingqiu, Beneficial, Xiangling, and Sucrose can all be useful in a wide number of situations, giving players of all types, whether free-to-play or pay-to-win, an easy solution for the game. In recent years, Hoyo has also managed to release new 4-star characters that have just as much of an incentive to be used as them, such as Yao Yao, Chevreuse, Shinobu, Farazan, and so on. Of course, for every one good 4-star they release, they're accompanied by a bunch of underwhelming ones. But the point is, effort is still being made to release give or take 1 new 4-star with every version, resulting in a fairly equal spread of 4 and 5-star characters, as it should be. Star Rail, on the other hand, puts more emphasis on 5-star units as evident by the sheer volume of them. Genshin's done double 5-stars continuously up until 1.3, where in 1.4 they released no new 5-star, and in 1.5 and 1.6 they brought out only 1 each, Eula and Kasuha respectively. In 2.0 and 2.1 they went back to double 5-star release with Ayaka and Yoimiya, then Shogun and Kokomi, but for the remainder of version 2, they released just 1 5-star or sometimes none at all. Meanwhile, from the very beginning of its release, Honkai Star Rail has consistently put out 2 new 5-stars per version, all the way from 1.0 to 2.4. While it's not obligatory to pull for all of them, the temptation and pressure to do so has prompted both serious and non-serious discussion over players' Jade reserves being spread too thin. 5 stars are naturally made stronger than 4 stars on account of the higher price tag associated with them. Having 4 stars be equally as strong as them defeats the purpose of spending however many tens, if not hundreds of dollars it takes to acquire them. So it makes perfect sense for them to, on average, perform much better than 4 stars. However, it's important to give players access to a serviceable lineup of 4 stars in order to accommodate those who lack the wherewithal to obtain all the shiny toys. In essence, while 5 stars are obviously going to outperform their lesser counterparts, the latter should still be close enough in either practicality or availability. The game did a fairly competent job at finding viable use cases for 4-star units throughout version 1. While Bronya was considered the best support in the game, Jingyuan had comparable market share as well, putting the two in close contention for most of the first year of the game. Trailing behind her was Pela, a debuff-oriented support who was used every so often but found long-term employment with the release of Acheron in 2.1. At least for now. Lynx was seen as a direct upgrade to Natasha, and while nowhere near the level of Locha and Huohuo, was a perfectly capable healer and support with equal deployment value to Gepard and Bailu overall. Damage-wise, Qingque, rage-inducing as she might be, was a 4-star with deceptively competitive DPS potential at the time. While inconsistent, she was roughly on the same playing field as that of Seela, Blade, and Xingyuan, which made her an extremely popular option for budget or free-to-play players. The damage over time department had a robust selection of 4-star units to go well with Kafka, making her one of the more cost-effective teams out there, as you could run her, plus any dual combination of Sambo, Luca, Gui Naifang, what have you. Herta found a forever home in Pure Fiction, where she remains the most useful character in that department to this day. It was inevitable for there to be a couple duds though. Dan Heng, Arlen, and Hope, to name a few, have never managed to garner meaningful headway and relevance, but all in all, while Hoyo wasted no time pumping out tons of feature units, the 4 stars held their own in market share, being widely used amongst the player base. Since version 2 onwards, however, things have begun to really shift away from them. As mentioned earlier, we've had 10 5-star characters in version 2 so far, but only 3 4-stars, Gallagher, Misha, and March. Being a damage dealer, Misha unfortunately falls victim to getting overshadowed by the vast majority of 5 stars purely for his lower stat line. As for Gallagher, following tremendous expansion on his niche, being break teams, his market share is substantially increased, making him one of the more valuable 4 stars in the game at the moment. So I'm not implying 4 stars haven't received any updates whatsoever. Gallagher is a significant step up from Lynx for sure. And soon in the near future, when March's Hunt form comes out, we'll see if she can change things up a bit, though so far Hunt 4 stars have not been that successful. All the same, the 4-star category in its entirety has been losing equity at a rather alarming rate. I should clarify that it's not because 4 stars have gotten nerfed or worse per se, more so that 5 stars have gotten so much better. The current situation with Honkai Star Rail is that while the game has most certainly powercraft, that's only endemic to the upper ceiling of the game, not so much affecting the power floor if that makes sense. So I'm not saying 4 stars are suddenly unviable. By comparing the game's current OP characters, Acheron, Black Swan, Sparkle, Robin, Aventurine, Firefly, and so on, with the old guard of version 1, Seela, Jingyuan, Bronya, Luocha, Japard, the difference is noticeable. Furthermore, though Star Rail's difficulty hasn't yet scaled to the point where older units are no longer usable, it has certainly become more challenging. The total HP pool of enemies in Memory of Chaos and Pure Fiction has been steadily rising on average, demanding players to optimize their parties more and more. For those who have been able to obtain half or more of all the new 5 stars, the difficulty spikes have been close to unnoticeable, but that's because there's been such a massive jump in strength from version 2's characters compared to most of version 1. Players of the Holy Trinity, Run, Mei, Robin, and Sparkle, or teams like Kafka, Swan, and Acheron Hypercarry, will face zero issues achieving 0 to 1 cycle clears in MLC or 80k in Pure Fiction. But what about for those who don't have the funds to obtain every 5-star? That's the current problem with Star Rail's 4-star units, or should I say, lack thereof. While a number of 4-stars have received indirect buffs, the aforementioned Gallagher with break teams, Pela with Acheron, and I guess maybe Shuei with break teams as well, 4-stars altogether have not kept up with the rapid acceleration of HSR's power creep. Right now, there isn't a single 4-star unit in the Apex tiers. Tingyun was the closest, but she's been effectively pushed down a tier by the Harmony trio and by attackers who don't need energy, only outperforming them in specific teams like Qingyuan or Lunai Danheng. Qingque has definitively lost her status as a top meta character by this point. While people always saw her as a gimmick, her ceiling back in the day was so good that you can make it work through sheer force alone. But now, the bar has been raised far past the point where it's worth investing into her for prospective players. Black Swan may as well seduce Kafka alongside Acheron, taking over dot teams and consequently pushing out Luca, Sambo, and Guinaifly. For the record, I'm not saying these 4-star units are no longer usable, it's just before they were competitive options, but now that so many new units have come out that supersede them, they've been relegated from being optimal choices to being store brand options, stuff you go for when you don't have or can't afford the name brand stuff. For lack of a better way to put it, roughly every top meta team has become gentrified. Most teams in this game have exclusively 5 stars for their best in slot. The only main exceptions are right now Acheron with Pela, Harmony MC with Gallagher, which extends to Boonhill and Firefly, and Lunai Danheng with Tingyun. That's it. Every other 4-star character at this point has been replaced by a 5-star unit, give or take. And the main reason for that is we're not getting any new 4-star characters for this new stage of power creep. Gallagher and Harmony MC received almost as much attention as Acheron for being strong, affordable units because of how rare 4-stars have gotten. Unless March defies all preconceptions of 4-star DPS characters, I don't know how much her inclusion will really affect things. I can think of a few factors behind Hoyo's aversion to making 4-star units, good ones in particular. No thanks to Star Rail's extremely linear combat, they've done a bang-up job making a diverse roster of units across a broad spectrum of niches. That being said, the game is still constrained by its one-dimensionality. It's a turn-based game with very digestible, rudimentary mechanics, making it more likely for units to eat into each other for market share. Let's draw a parallel to Genshin for a moment. Right now, the 4 best Electro units are Yaimiko, Shogun, Fischl, and Shinobu. With Genshin being a real-time action RPG, it's easier for the 4 characters, similar as they may be, to edge out in value in one situation or another when factoring in team composition. For example, if you want to build a Hyper Bloom team but your party needs a healer, then Shinobu would be more valuable over Shogun in that scenario. You want to build a Hyper Bloom team that can run Kokomi, then Shogun beats out Shinobu. There's also elemental reactions adding more separability between the characters. Some Electro units prefer Quicken while others are for Hyper Bloom. Theoretically, the same can apply to HSR. Gallagher, Huoho, and Luocha all have their respective gimmicks, but there aren't quite as many gameplay circumstances that distinguish parties from each other all that much, especially now with the way they're making so many hybrid units. Throughout my recent meta discussions for Star Rail, I touched on the blurring between paths multiple times, like how we have units who can do 2 or 3 jobs at the same time. A tank who can also debuff and follow-up attack, a support who can turn events, AoE buff and follow-up attack, a damage dealer who can ignore weakness type, a healer who can also buff and battery. With there being so many multi-role 5-stars in the game, it makes it increasingly more difficult for them to release 4-star units who otherwise could fill in those niches. Shuei was once that DPS character who could ignore weakness types, making her a potentially viable rogue strategy for players who don't want to deal with type coverage, but then Acheron came out. I know the two aren't exactly one-to-one and that Shuei is more for breaks, not specifically ignoring weakness type, but there still is overlap. Hanya was the SP generator character, but Sparkle took over that niche. All the dot characters got friend-zoned by Kafka because of Black Swan. Hell, 5-stars are power creeping other 5-stars, let alone 4-star characters. Previously, Acheron has torn through the ceiling of Star Rail, and there have also been talks of Firefly pushing the goalpost even more. As much as I hate when I get comments in my Genshin videos going, well, actually you can't compare Candice and Xingqiu because they don't do the same thing, even though ultimately the goal is Hydro application from both of them. Yes, if we're being extremely technical, Candice does have her own niche, so if they had a boss that strictly demands melee Hydro basic attacks, that's one thing she can do that Xingqiu cannot. The problem with Star Rail is that coping with technicalities doesn't get you very far. It's a turn-based game, and though there are varying game modes that incentivize different types of characters, all of them can be cleared with high enough numbers. How this prevents 4 stars from being good is the fundamental basis of stats versus rarity. 4 stars are easier to obtain, and so they're weaker. They used to get away with being the only option, but with 5 stars being pumped out faster than thirst traps on Instagram, every niche is being filled up and or made irrelevant, both in the damage dealing and support department, leaving 4 stars with few options to truly make their own. A possibility for why Hoyo doesn't release many 4 stars for HSR is because they only want to make units that have a chance of being used. In Genshin, they have a tendency to just release whatever, regardless of how they function in the meta. That's why there are so many quote-unquote junk 4 stars in Genshin. They can do that though, since players can develop a motivation for playing a character for non-practical reasons. The 5 Sayu mains out there who play her for her roly-poly skill, but there's no overworld exploration in Star Rail, it's all combat. Subsequently, while there's still waifu over meta, most are primarily motivated to pull for practical value, not for their playstyle or for the sake of fun. So unless they want to release a bunch of forgettable 4 stars, they'll have to make them competitively viable. If they release too many though, that can take away interest from the 5 stars in the same niche. Aventurine and Fushuan are 2 of the most valuable units in the game because there's no 4-star tank. Literally, there's no 4-star tank, and don't say Fire Trailblazer, they're the fakest tank in the game. But that doesn't mean they should just ignore it. Once again, not every player can get every 5 star. Filling every niche in the game with only 5 stars can alienate those who either join the game late or free to place. Obviously, 5 stars should be at the top of the pecking order, but there still has to be enough 4 stars to at least form functional teams that can keep up with the meta. Ideally, it should entail a healthy balance of like 66-33, with 4 stars taking at least 1/3 of the market share in teams. There needs to be more attention given to 4 stars purely for the sake of accommodation. I know you don't have to have every 5 star in the game to clear everything comfortably, but when it feels like all that's being made available for future content are 5 stars, it's perfectly understandable why players feel squeezed out right now. Honkai Star Rail places heavy emphasis on team coverage, having a wide variety of teams to account for a wide variety of circumstances. The irony though is that even though Genshin has virtually no need for party diversity, they have a bunch of top tier 4-star characters anchoring the player base, which helps reduce the pressure to pull for every 5-star. Between the 2 games, it would make more pragmatic sense to have a power 5 in Star Rail given the more prolific endgame content. Not a single 4-star character has come close in equity to Genshin's Bennett, Xingqiu, or Xiangling. I'm aware that 4-star DPS units are forever cursed with a lower power budget, but even for supports, there are only a few of them who are best in slot for teams. Having to settle for a downgraded version of a team, even if said team can still clear the game, is a terrible feeling, knowing you can get so much more out of your favorite unit if only you had this or that. They have to release more 4 stars, preferably relevant 4 stars to fit in teams. They don't have to be Bennett or Xingqiu levels of busted, but just make more units like Gallagher who are strong budget-friendly characters. I have no problem with them sending us 2 5 stars per version. What I do take issue with is them sending only 5 stars, especially considering they're advancing the game's power scaling along with it. Eventually, even the best 4-star supports like Tingyun and Pela just won't be enough for the game. TLDR, give us a 4-star tank. I can't believe we've gone this long without a single 4-star tank. For that matter, I want to ask you guys, what are some niches that can potentially be filled with a 4-star? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments down below. That's all for today though, so if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Honkai style discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.